Chosen one, tonight the dam breaks. Tonight someone who helped orchestrate the most elaborate character assassination campaign against you is about to shatter under the weight of their own deception. They're cornered and desperate, and the only exit left to them is the truth they've been suffocating for months. What they once believed was a masterpiece of manipulation is about to collapse into a confession of corruption. But this story doesn't begin with their breakdown. It begins with you, calm and unmoved, standing in the eye of the hurricane they manufactured, watching their world implode while you remain untouchable. You've been playing chess while they were playing checkers. Only now are they realizing the board was never theirs to control. To understand the scale of what's coming, we have to examine the mastermind behind it. This isn't someone who stumbled into deceit. This is someone who breathes manipulation like oxygen. Their life has been built around constructing false realities and watching people dance to those fabricated truths. When they first encountered you, they recognized something that terrified them: authentic power, not power that comes from coercion or control, but the kind that radiates from a person who knows exactly who they are and refuses to compromise that truth for anyone. Your very existence threatened their house of cards because real recognizes real, and they knew they were counterfeit. So they did what master manipulators always do. They studied you not to understand you but to find angles of attack. They tracked how you moved through the world, who you trusted, what mattered to you, building a psychological profile, mapping vulnerabilities, preparing for a war you didn't even know was coming. The brilliance of their scheme was its complexity. They didn't rely on one simple lie. They wove an intricate web of half-truths, strategic omissions, and outright fabrications that painted you as everything you were not. If you were generous, they labeled you manipulative. If you were confident, they called you arrogant. If you were successful, they smeared you as corrupt. But here's what they failed to anticipate: their obsession with destroying you would become the instrument of their own ruin. Every moment they spent crafting lies about you was a moment they weren't tending to their own crumbling foundation. They became so consumed with engineering your downfall that they neglected to shore up their own position. And while they perfected the Marcus story, their life quietly fell apart. Their methods went far beyond casual gossip or petty slander. This was psychological warfare and slow motion, an expert campaign built to wound. They learned how to weaponize your kindness. When you gave people the benefit of the doubt, they labeled you naive. When you tried to keep relationships alive despite growing tension, they called your efforts manipulation or desperation. The mastermind specialized in moving goalposts, inventing impossible standards that shifted the moment you tried to meet them. Do something ordinary, and they'd amplify it into an offense, then impose a new rule that retroactively made your natural behavior look like a transgression. The whole strategy was meant to make you doubt yourself, to keep you off balance and reactive rather than calm, observant, and strategic. What made their campaign especially poisonous was how they harnessed community dynamics to magnify every falsehood. They didn't just whisper lies. They built echo chambers where the narrative could bounce and gain false authority through repetition. They understood that if enough voices repeated the same story, it would begin to feel like fact to anyone who wasn't paying close attention. The foreshadowing was always there for those who knew how to read the signals: the way they spoke about you with too much certainty, the tales that were detailed enough to sound plausible but vague enough to avoid verification, the emotions that felt slightly performed rather than real. You notice those cues because you're chosen. You see what most people miss. Now pay attention to the second player in this drama, because their motive was the most primitive and therefore the most dangerous. This person didn't join the campaign for strategy or gain. They joined because your existence forced them to confront everything they were not and could never become. Jealousy is a strange, corrosive force. It requires the jealous person to keep recognizing the superiority of their target. Every morning they woke up and faced the truth. You had something they desperately wanted but couldn't attain: your effortless charisma, authentic confidence, the way you attracted genuine respect and admiration. Instead of turning that awareness into fuel for self-improvement, they chose destruction. If they could not possess what you had, they would see you stripped of it. They would drag you down to their level, even if it meant corrupting their own soul in the process. That person became the engine of the rumor mill, the eager amplifier who spread every lie the mastermind invented, turning envy into a weapon and loyalty into a lie. They added their own flourishes to the stories, their interpretations of your actions, their personal poison injected into the narrative. They weren't merely repeating lies, they were improving them, sharpening the edges so the falsehoods cut deeper, dressing them in details that made them feel believable and devastating. The beautiful irony is that their jealousy blinded them to their own reality. So intent on bringing you down, they failed to see they were being used as a pawn in someone else's game. The mastermind needed their enthusiasm and their willingness to get their hands dirty, never intending to share any real power, credit, or reward with them. Watch the signs that have been building: increasing desperation, louder and more frantic attempts to convince others of your alleged wrongdoing, and a shrinking circle. As people begin to see through the obsession, they will learn the hard way that jealousy is a poison that destroys the vessel that contains it. Even more twisted was their willingness to burn bridges and sacrifice relationships to fuel the campaign, cutting off mutual friends who refused to join, undermining their own credibility by growing more obsessive and irrational, and celebrating every perceived setback in your life while hypocritically claiming to be the victim. That contradiction reveals the truth of their motive. They weren't seeking justice, they were seeking the perverse satisfaction of watching someone they envied suffer. And then there was the most infuriating player of all, the one who knew better but chose silence. They had access to facts that could have cleared your name immediately. They held the moral authority to speak up and end the lies. Yet they stayed quiet because your removal served their purposes, whether to advance an agenda, protect a position, or simply avoid the hassle of taking a stand. They chose complicity over courage. That silence made them as culpable as the loudest accuser, and their choice will be part of the reckoning that finally exposes the whole scheme. They enjoyed the drama and chaos that swirled around the false narrative. They were simply too weak to stand against the tide of lies, choosing self-preservation over justice. Their silence was never neutral. Every day they stayed quiet was another day. They allowed falsehood to masquerade as truth. Every conversation in which they failed to defend you became a conversation in which they actively participated in your character assassination. Silence has a way of curdling into complicity, and complicity hardens into guilt. That guilt has been eating them from the inside for months. As they watched you suffer under accusations they could have stopped, producing a pressure that is now close to exploding. Their internal conflict has been building to a crescendo because they are trapped between competing loyalties and self-interest. On one side, they understand that speaking up is the right thing to do. On the other, they are terrified of the fallout, both from the conspirators who expected their silence and from you, who might never forgive them for not acting sooner. They did not anticipate how exhausting it would be to keep up the act of neutrality. Every conversation became a careful dance of deflection. Every interaction with you carried the weight of withheld truth, and every passing day added another layer to that mounting shame. They are discovering that complicity demands constant energy to maintain, while truth requires none. The first crack in their carefully managed facade showed the moment you stopped playing the part they needed you to play. They relied on you becoming emotional, reactive, and vulnerable, because those reactions would have given them ammunition and justification. Instead, you stepped back and watched with the calm clarity of someone rooted in their own truth, becoming an observer rather than a participant. That shift unsettled their entire operation, sending ripples through the machinery of deception and exposing the fragility under the surface. The mastermind couldn't understand why their psychological warfare was failing. The jealous accomplice couldn't fathom why you weren't crumbling under the pressure. And the silent enabler began to wonder if they were actually on the right side of this conflict. Your transition from victim to observer changed everything. Suddenly you weren't playing their game by their rules. You stopped feeding them the SAD reactions they needed to fuel their story. In becoming unpredictable, you undermine manipulation. Unpredictability is the enemy of control, and your refusal to perform destabilized the entire operation. You began to connect inconsistencies between different versions of events and the coordination behind seemingly independent sources, and those connected dots revealed the true scope of the conspiracy against you. More importantly, you started to see the fractures inside their alliance. The mastermind's mounting irritation with their accomplices' incompetence, the jealous person's growing resentment at being used as a tool, and the silent enabler's swelling guilt over their inaction. Pressure built until an explosion felt inevitable. This is when you embodied your chosen nature, not as a victim of their schemes, but as a force of truth their lies could not withstand. Your presence in authentic power began to destabilize the false structure they had erected around you. Something shifted that made everything unravel. The masterminds had bitten off more than they could chew. Greed pushed them to expand their web of deception too far. They promised rewards to accomplices they never planned to deliver, let other schemes run unattended, and stretched their operations into territories they couldn't control. As their other corrupt ventures collided with this campaign against you, the cost of maintaining the lie grew unbearable. Their initial success intoxicated them and encouraged overreach, and because their corruption was interconnected, when one thread weakened, the whole tapestry began to collapse. The first signs were obvious: the jealous accomplices' simmering anger at an expected reward that never arrived, the dawning realization that they might have been used, the silent enablers' mounting panic as guilt, turned into the recognition that their silence had bought them nothing but culpability. They had believed neutrality would protect them, only to discover it had made them complicit. And worst of all for the mastermind, everything that had been carefully concealed started to surface. Promises unkempt, partnerships they needed to distance themselves from, and the reality that someone had outmaneuvered them, perhaps even by using their own tactics against them. The weight of managing multiple lies, multiple relationships built on deceit, and a growing web of false narratives had become impossible to sustain, and now the collapse was drawing near. Their carefully constructed empire of lies is collapsing, and their co-conspirators are beginning to turn on them. The same lack of loyalty and integrity they weaponized against others is now being redirected at them by their own allies, a beautiful, inevitable justice born from their own design. By building relationships on deception and short-term gain, they guaranteed those bonds would fracture under the weight of contradiction. As their world implodes, watch how their behavior changes. The mastermind grows increasingly aggressive and reckless. Mistakes begin to surface. Inconsistencies appear in earlier statements, and traces of manipulation are left where once there was only careful concealment. At the same time, the jealous accomplice finally awakens to the fact that they were a pawn in someone else's game. Their eagerness to destroy you curdles into rage at having been used, and they start to question the stories and promises that drew them in. The silent enabler can no longer live with the consequences of their inaction. Each new piece of evidence compounds the guilt, and the pressure to relieve that burden becomes unbearable. When corruption becomes the glue holding relationships together, those alliances collapse as soon as the cost outweighs the benefit. Honor among thieves proves to be a myth. The foreshadowing that is threaded through this whole ordeal now reaches a crescendo. Every contradiction, every small doubt, every fissure in their united front has been building toward one inevitable moment. Someone will break their silence, and when they do, the house of cards will fall in spectacular fashion. The person about to speak has been trapped by circumstances of their own making, and the only escape they see is through confession. This will not be a measured strategic disclosure. It will be raw and desperate, a bid for self-preservation that drags everyone else into the light. When a manipulator finally cracks, they rarely offer a tidy truth. They unload everything: years of buried guilt, resentment toward co-conspirators, and fear of exposure will pour out, revealing connections, betrayals, and petty motives that were kept hidden. Their confession will map the true scope of the conspiracy: how many people were involved, how long it was planned, how methodical and coordinated they had been, how they manufactured evidence, and how they manipulated entire communities into accepting their falsehoods. More damning still, it will expose the raw human motives beneath the scheme: petty jealousy, cold calculation, cowardice, and a total absence of integrity. As these truths surface, the social landscape around you will shift fast. Those who once looked at you with suspicion will remember your worth. Those who believed the lies will rush to distance themselves from the liars. The narrative built to justify your supposed guilt will collapse and reorganize itself around your proven innocence. And the world that watched the drama unfold will begin to see with clear eyes who created it and why. The beauty of truth is that once it begins to flow, there is no wall high enough and no container strong enough to stop it. It slips through the cracks of every carefully laid deception, saturating the ground until the entire foundation of lies collapses. The first confession will not be a whisper, it will be the opening of a floodgate, unleashing a torrent of revelations that no one can contain. And once that first voice breaks the silence, others will follow, not out of virtue, but out of desperation. Each conspirator will rush to protect themselves by exposing their partners in deception, eager to minimize their own guilt by magnifying the guilt of others. The jealous accomplice, consumed by rage at having been used, will turn on the mastermind with a vengeance sharper than any blade. They will leak private conversations, reveal hidden messages, and share evidence of deliberate coordination. What once looked like righteous anger will be unmasked as cold calculation. Their bitterness will fuel their betrayal, and in that betrayal, the web of lies will begin to unravel strand by strand. The silent enabler, meanwhile, will crack under the suffocating weight of guilt. Every sleepless night, every moment spent watching injustice unfold while saying nothing has been tightening the noose of their conscience. When the pressure finally becomes unbearable, they will spill everything, admitting what they knew, when they knew it, and how their silence allowed lies to masquerade as truth. Their confession will be less about courage and more about survival, a desperate attempt to rid themselves of the guilt that has been devouring them from within. Even the mastermind, once so confident in their control, will eventually find themselves isolated and exposed. Backed into a corner, they will attempt one last manipulation, shifting blame onto those who once served them. They'll claim they were misunderstood, that their motives were pure, that others pushed them into decisions they regret. But by then, no one will believe them. The same tactics they used to destroy you, lies, distortion, and character assassination, will be turned against them by their own allies. The machinery they built for your downfall will become the very mechanism of their destruction. And as these confessions pour out, your vindication won't be subtle, it will be overwhelming. Every lie spoken about you will be revealed as projection of their own flaws. Every accusation they hurled will turn back and strike them as deflection. The flaws they tried to pin on you will be shown to exist only in themselves. Their false narrative required them to erase your real character, dismiss your true contributions, and fabricate motives that never existed. But truth has a way of surfacing, and once spoken by those who never valued honesty to begin with, it carries even greater weight. What they never intended to reveal is the most important truth of all. just how extraordinary you really are. The sheer scale of their efforts to destroy you proves your significance. For them to devote so much time, energy, and coordination into fabricating lies about you, to recruit others, to invent stories, to build a campaign against you shows the power of your authentic self and the threat it posed to their false world. They feared you because authenticity cannot be manipulated, and your existence alone revealed the fragility of their entire illusion. This vindication, however, is more than just the clearing of your name. It is a living demonstration of the stark contrast between authentic power and manufactured influence. While they played political games and spent their lives weaving false narratives, you continued to simply exist as yourself. That authenticity, unshaken and unaltered, proved more powerful than every scheme combined. And now, as their empire of lies collapses, the world will see that what they tried to bury only grew stronger in the shadows. Here is where your chosen nature shines brightest. This ordeal has not broken you, nor has it weakened you. It has transformed you. Tested in the fire of injustice, you emerged not only intact, but forged into something greater than before. You now carry a priceless gift. The ability to see through facades instantly. You recognize manipulation before it takes root. You can distinguish between relationships built on authenticity and those built on transaction. You know who stands with you when the narrative is uncertain, and who has the courage to speak truth, even when lies are easier. The skills you have cultivated through this ordeal, keen observation, sharp pattern recognition, emotional resilience, and strategic thinking, are not merely survival tools. They are the hallmarks of transformation. You are no longer just someone who withstood the storm. You are someone who learned to read the winds, to see the patterns in the chaos, and to turn what was meant for destruction into the foundation of unshakable strength. Every trial has prepared you. Every betrayal has sharpened you, and every false accusation has only underscored the undeniable reality. You are chosen, and no scheme, no lie, no conspiracy can ever take that truth away. These are not just lessons you picked up along the way. These are enduring superpowers, spiritual tools, and inner technologies that will serve you for the rest of your life. What was meant to crush you has in fact refined you. You have been upgraded through adversity in ways most people can't imagine. Hardship became your teacher, betrayal became your training ground, and injustice became the fire that sharpened your discernment. You didn't simply survive this ordeal, you evolved into a version of yourself that is stronger, sharper, and more unshakable than ever before. You've learned to trust your own judgment with absolute certainty. When the voices around you insisted that you were wrong about yourself, you held firm to your truth. When the social environment gaslit you, twisting your reality and trying to destabilize your mind, you anchored yourself in what you knew to be real. That unwavering self-trust is not only rare, it's invaluable. It means that no matter what storms come, you will never again be pulled away from your center by the noise of other people's opinions. You know who you are, and that self-knowledge has become unshakable. As the dust begins to settle, and the truth becomes undeniable, your entire social landscape will transform. The people who once took part in your character assassination will find themselves exposed, their reputations stained by their own actions. They will be discredited and pushed to the margins, their credibility shattered. Those who remained neutral, too fearful to defend you, too cautious to stand in integrity, will be revealed as weak, their silence exposed as complicity. And those rare few who stood beside you in the dark, when standing with you carried risk, will be revealed as people of true integrity, worthy of your lasting trust. This isn't just vindication, it is purification. Your social circle is being cleansed of opportunists, manipulators, and cowards. You're no longer tethered to relationships built on convenience or false appearances. You are no longer wasting emotional energy on people who allowed themselves to be manipulated into turning against you. What remains after this cleansing is priceless, a network of authentic connections built on truth, respect, and loyalty. Every new relationship you form from this point forward will be stronger, more genuine, and more nourishing to your soul. The shift will be unmistakable. People will approach you differently, not just because the lies about you have been exposed, but because of how you carried yourself while under attack. They will admire the way you stood in integrity, how you never let go of your authenticity, and how you withstood a storm without breaking. Your reputation will not simply be restored, it will be enhanced, magnified by resilience. You will be known not just for your talents, but for your strength, your endurance, and your ability to embody truth in the face of lies. Those qualities are rare, and they command respect that no fabricated image could ever buy. And the most powerful part of it all, you never had to compromise yourself to reach this point. You didn't need to sink to their level or adopt their tactics to survive. You didn't need to lie, manipulate, or destroy others to win. You stayed true. And in the end, that very truth became your victory. That is what makes this so satisfying. You overcame not by becoming like them, but by refusing to. Now the gifts you gained in this process are permanent. You have cultivated the ability to see through facades almost instantly. You can identify manipulation before it even takes root. You can tell the difference between authentic relationships and transactional ones with a single interaction. You now know who truly stands with you when the narrative is uncertain, and who has the courage to defend truth when lies are louder. The skills forged in this fire, observation, pattern recognition, emotional resilience, and strategic thinking, are not mere survival mechanisms. They are lifelong powers. They will shape the way you navigate every environment, from personal relationships to professional spaces, from spiritual growth to community leadership. They make you more effective, more discerning, and more magnetic to those who value integrity. You have been tested in the fire of injustice, and instead of being consumed, you were tempered like steel. Every betrayal became a sharpening stone. Every false accusation became an opportunity to strengthen your grip on truth. Every disappointment became a filter that revealed who was truly for you. The result is not just vindication, but elevation. You are no longer who you were before this began. You are wiser, stronger, and clearer than ever. You are not simply restored, you are reborn, carrying with you superpowers of spirit, mind, and heart that will guide you for the rest of your journey. You didn't need to lie, scheme, or manipulate. You didn't need to twist stories, stage performances, or engineer shadows in the minds of others. All you had to do was stand in your truth, and that truth became their undoing. Their own tactics were poisoned chalices. The seeds of their collapse were embedded in the very methods they used to attack you. Every act of betrayal carried within it the inevitability of their own betrayal. Every manipulation destabilized their foundation until nothing could hold it together. What destroyed them was not your hand, but the natural consequences of their choices. This is the difference between hollow, temporary wins and enduring strategic success. They achieved fleeting victories through lies, but deception always carries an expiration date. Their empire of manipulation had no roots, no anchor, and no resilience. Meanwhile, you built something that cannot be torn down because it was constructed on the unshakable foundation of authenticity. Integrity is eternal, and integrity always wins in the long arc of justice. The chosen do not win by becoming reflections of their enemies. They win by embodying such deep authenticity that their enemies cannot withstand their own reflection. Your light didn't just expose their darkness, it amplified their blindness. They were so intent on your downfall that they never noticed the cracks forming beneath their own feet. They mistook your stillness for weakness, your patience for naivety, your silence for surrender. But in truth, your restraint was the very force that magnified their collapse. Their storm grew louder, but the eye remained calm, and that I was you. Think back to the beginning. You stood untouchable in the center of their hurricane, watching chaos spiral while you remained unshaken. That image, once private, is now public for all to see. Everyone can witness what you always knew, that their storm had no power over your foundation. Their narrative has collapsed into evidence. Every accusation a mirror reflecting their own corruption. Their manipulations reveal only their true nature. Their carefully constructed facade has been stripped bare, exposing desperation, greed, and weakness. And here you stand, chosen. This ordeal has proven it beyond all doubt. You endured their most vicious attacks, yet preserved your sanity when they tried to bend your reality. You clung to your integrity when they insisted you were the problem. You protected your authentic story when they tried to rewrite it for you. What was meant to annihilate you has only refined you, forged you into steel. Their confession is coming. The truth they've hidden is unraveling. The walls of silence are cracking, and the weight of suppressed guilt is forcing them to speak. With every revelation, your vindication grows. You didn't merely survive their assault, you transmuted it into triumph. This is the sign of the chosen, not that you avoid trials, but that you turn them into transformation. Not that you escape lies, but that you outshine them until they dissolve into truth. You will meet enemies, yes, but you defeat them not by sinking into the mud, but by standing so firmly in who you are that in trying to reach you, they destroy themselves. The false story they built about you has blown away, like ash. Your authentic story, the one you carried with courage when no one believed you, now rises brighter, clearer, and more compelling than ever. That story does more than clear your name. It crowns you with victory. You are not merely exonerated. You are elevated, reshaped by the ordeal, and defined not by what was done to you, but by how you overcame it. You are vindicated. You are victorious. Most of all, you are unshakably, undeniably chosen. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for growth in my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Teach me to rest in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I believe your plans for me are for prosperity and not for harm, to give me a hopeful future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always hearing my voice. I offer this prayer in the name of Jesus. Tate, Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and for the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please